Hello everyone. Welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS. This is the work from home edition, and we take up the important articles from the newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the examination point of view. So let's start our today's discussion by taking the important articles from the Hindu newspaper. And these are the articles for today. And let's take up the first article of the day. The first article which appears on the news screens reads Parliamentary Business and an Essential Pit Stop. Now, this particular article appears in the newspaper because of the important concept of the department related parliamentary standing committees. We know that these are the committees which function in the parliament and do the necessary and very vital task of deliberating in the bills that come into the parliament that are to be passed. So the author in this article analyzes the performance of these department related parliamentary committees, their role in the parliament, how have they performed, and what are the suggestions that he wants to make with respect to reforming these committees. So this discussion becomes very important from our polity point of view, and with this let's understand the important points related to these department related parliamentary standing committees. So, what are these standing committees? So, whenever we talk about the department related standing committees, they are a part of the committees consisting of members of parliament. So, whenever we talk about committees in the parliament, the members of parliament form the members of those committee, and it is a permanent and regular committee which is constituted from time to time according to the provisions of an act of parliament or rules of procedure and conduct of business. So they are functioning in the parliament, and the work done by the Indian parliament is not only voluminous but also of a complex nature. Hence, a good deal of its work is carried out in these parliamentary committees. So the majority chunk of the deliberation work which the parliament has to carry out, it is given to these parliamentary committees. This is what the committees are constituted for, to take care of this voluminous work of the parliament. And they are constituted where both members from the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha form a part of this parliamentary committee and deliberate on the topic given to them or the area of bill given to them. They deliberate on it and make certain recommendations with respect to that bill. So this is the nature of these parliamentary committees. Now they are of various kinds. One is the financial standing committee. These would be those standing committees which would be dealing with financial matters. Then there are department related standing committees. These are those specific committees which are taking up a task of a certain department of a ministry. And then there are other standing committees. Now, let's talk about something about these department related standing committees. So, there are 24 department related standing committees in the parliament, and each of these committees have 31 members, and they are taken from 1:2 2 ratio with respect to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So 21 are taken from the Lok Sabha and 10 are taken from the Rajya Sabha. The 17 of these 24 departmental related standing committees were formally constituted with effect from April 1993. And after experiencing the working of this system of over a decade, the system was restructured in July 2004, wherein the number of department related standing committees was increased from 17 to 24. So earlier the number was 17, and when it was seen that this system of standing committees is working fine, then the number of these department related standing committees was increased from 17 to 24. These members of these committees are to be nominated by Speaker of Lok Sabha or the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha respectively. So whoever is coming from the Lok Sabha, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha will nominate them, and similarly for Rajya Sabha, Chairman of the Rajya Sabha will nominate them. So the term of office of these committees does not exceed 1 year. So these committees are constituted, and the members hold the office in their committees for 1 year. And these committees are serviced either by Lok Sabha Secretariat or the Rajya Sabha Secretariat, depending on who has appointed the chairman of that committee. So this is the vital information with respect to these departmentally related standing committees. Now, to talk about some examples in the previous some months, we have ourselves in our sessions dealt with a lot of department related standing committees. So when we saw that one of the department related standing committees gave out recommendations against the data protection law, and consequently the government withdrew the data protection law, this was done at the pretext of this one such department related standing committee only, which had suggested these reforms as close to more than 80 changes it had suggested in the data protection bill, right? We remember that. And this was the work done by department related standing committee only. Similarly, we talked about in our previous sessions about one department related standing committee giving out the reforms and suggestions in the guardianship and maintenance laws of India. So, the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act and the Hindu Marriage and Guidance Act, this kind of committee also suggested changes in that act. We had seen some sessions ago. This was also the work done by the Department Related Standing Committee. And yesterday we saw an article which talked about one committee mentioning the changes that are required in the medical device industry, wherein the CDSCO, or the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, the committee felt that it is being inequipped to handle the medical devices industry, and a separate regulator should be instituted to deal with the medical devices industry and its regulation. So separate regulator should be formed. So all of these suggestions were made by respective department related standing committees. So these are the recent examples wherein the department related standing committees have played a vital role. So, what are their functions? As we saw from these examples, their core function is to consider the demands for grants of the related ministries, departments, and report thereon. And the report shall not suggest anything of the nature of cut motions. Then second is, as we are seeing from the examples, to examine bills, whatever bills are coming to the parliament pertaining to those related ministries or departments, referred to the committee by the chairman of the speaker as they may be, and report thereon. So they are to examine on the bills and report thereon, and to consider the annual reports of the ministry and departments and report thereon. So annual reports of these ministry also, these particular committees are to be examined, and to consider national basic long-term policy documents presented to the houses if referred to the committee by chairman or the speaker as the case may be, and report thereon again. So these are the functions of the department related parliamentary standing committee. Then what is the significance then of this department related parliamentary standing committee? So as we are seeing that since they perform such a huge function and such a vital function of examining bills, examining long term policies and plans, so therefore their significance is can be logically derived, where emphasis on long term plans, policies guiding the working of the executive, these committees are providing necessary direction, guidance, and inputs for broad policy formulations and in achievement of the long-term national perspective by the executive. So as we can see that the biggest significance of these committees is to lend the necessary guidance, direction, and inputs for the executive. So the executive comes in with making of a bill. Let's say that the bureaucracy and the permanent and the temporary executive of the country has formulated a bill, then it goes into the parliament where such kind of a committee would be examining the bill. So by the committee examining a bill, it gives the necessary additional guidance and a perspective that is required for the executive to hone their functions. So what we might think of in a popular notion that having such committees might actually hamper the process of decision making for the executive, it actually is not like that. And the author feels that an additional presence of a committee to judge and examine the perspectives mentioned in the policy or in the bill is very important to do by a parliamentary committee, so that the interests of the people are also highlighted. All the stakeholders, all the other people's interests are highlighted in the policy as well as the bill, and for that purpose the department related parliamentary standing committees are very important. An example of this which the author gives is about the farm laws, wherein, keeping the political tensions aside, a significant chunk of the farm laws which the author thinks why they were being repealed were of the fact that they were not passed through a department related standing committee. They were not given to any standing committee to give their perspective on, and that is why it could not take up the issues of the stakeholders and public interest into its formulation, and that is why it had to face a repeal. That is why the author feels that there is a high significance of these department related parliamentary standing committees. Then second is, with these committees, it is easier to examine a topic in depth because a committee is getting the topic and 31 members are present in that committee who are to examine a topic, which would not be possible if the topic is thrown open to an assembly of 700 people. So less number of people targeting one topic can provide a better opportunity to examine a topic in depth. Is was the article author thinks in the article. And the work put in by the total 24 department related standing committees in examine the demand for grants of all the ministries equals 30 days of functioning of the parliament. So this is also a significant fact, where the number of hours which these department related standing committees meet for is quite a lot, and that many hours and days the parliament itself does not meet and function. So therefore, to establish a parallel system of committees working and deliberating upon the bills becomes very important, and it divides the time, the crucial time for the parliament to work on important issues. And then they enable input from experts and those who may be directly affected by a policy or legislation as well. So as we saw, they gather all the perspectives of all stakeholders and public interest which is there for the policy and the bill. And being outside direct public glare allows members to discuss issues and reach consensus without worrying about constituency or party pressures. So this is also one of the important point, where since the members of these department related standing committee are simply there to discuss upon that issue, to deliberate upon that issue, and they have no other pressures that of being responsible to their constituency or having any party pressure, that is why their deliberation can be called as a unbiased and a more fruitful deliberation on that bill or policy. And then overall secure more accountability of the executive towards the legislature. This is also one of the very significant point for these committees, is that when the executive is preparing the policy or the bill and sending it to the parliament to this committee, when the committee deliberates upon it, it is actually ensuring the accountability of the executive towards the legislature, wherein whatever action the executive is taking, the legislature through the committee is there to sit upon the executive and make sure that the executive is accountable enough by deliberating the policies and the bills that the executive has sent. So these are the significances of the department related parliamentary standing committee. Now, with this significance, what are the issues or the challenges that the standing committees that the authors highlights? First is the authors highlight that the meetings can happen behind closed doors, of which the minutes of the meeting are never published, creating the issue of transparency in the working of the committee. So this is one kind of an issue which the author is highlighting, that though the meetings happening in closed doors do favor the committee members to take part in the discussions without any tension of what other people might say, but it also creates an issue about the transparency of the committee. Then the committee's recommendations are not binding in nature. This becomes one of the most important challenge, where since they are not binding, all the work that is done by the standing committee can result into bypassing the result of this detailed scrutiny of the bill that they make. And then third is lack of standing research support, wherein there is an absence of dedicated research associated with this committee. So the committee does have members of parliament, but in the specific area that they are deliberating upon or examining, they do not have dedicated researchers of that area, which makes them lacking in the research which is required for building perspective of that bill, and that is also highlighted as a major challenge. Then fourth is all the bills are not referred to these committees, so that also becomes a problem, where all the important bills sometimes are not referred to these standing committees, which is why, like we saw in the farm laws example, if there are some critical bills and they are not made compulsory to be referred to a standing committee, that might create a problem. And then fifth is the 1 year tenure leaves very little time for specialization. So 1 year tenure keeping the members tenure in these committees, the author feels that that is a issue, and 1 year tenure is a very less time for specialization. And the attendance of MPs at the meetings is also weak, and also one committee has to deal with too many ministries. These are the issues and challenges of the standing committees which are there around all the committees that are there in the parliament. So apart from these issues, then what are the suggestions that the author makes to reform these department related standing committees? Because up until now, we have seen that these committees are very important and they hold a lot of significance, but they have certain challenges. So what can be the methods that can be suggested to reform them? So first, the first reform that the author suggests is that all discussions in this committee should be frank and free, and for this it may be provided that during the discussions of the committee meetings, no whip of the party would apply to them. This is the first suggestion that the author makes to ensure the adequate independence of the members working in the committee. And second, the suggestions which the author make is that these committees can be given a fixed timeline to come up with the recommendation and present its report, which can be decided by the speaker or chairman, as the case may be, whoever has constituted the committee. So this is also a major issue, wherein when the issue goes to the committee, wherein which we had seen with the data protection law, the issue goes to the committee, and if the committee takes a lot of time to deliberate upon the topic, it leads to a delay in decision making. So in order to plug this gap, the committee should be given a fixed timeline to come up with their recommendation. And the third is to ensure quality work in these committees. Experts in the field may be invited who could bring with them the necessary domain knowledge, and also help introduce the latest developments and trends in that field from worldwide arena. So this is also a good suggestion that the author is making, wherein we saw that not having adequate researchers and standard research available with them was becoming an issue. So now what can be added to their help is the experts in that field can also be added to the committee to help them with gaining that necessary domain knowledge. And then the suggestion which the author makes is that the speaker or chairman should have the right to fix a time limit, sometimes even stringent if the government of the day asks for it, and if the demand is found to be reasonable by the speaker and chairman. So this is linked to the keeping the time limit fixed for the committee, wherein in order to avoid the delay in decision making, there should be a fixed time limit for the committee to come to a result. And the last suggestion is, when it comes to the budget proposals of the ministries, with respect to the budget activities of the ministries, the committees should not limit themselves to discussing just the budget proposals and endorsing them with a few qualifications here or amendments there, is what the author feels. But rather than this, they should also come up with suggestions for the ministries to take up new initiatives and people friendly measures. So he wants to enhance and elaborate on the role of these committees, where they should not just be deliberating on the budget proposals, but they should come up with their own suggestions to take up new initiatives and other measures. So these are the suggestions which ultimately the author gives in the discussion of performance of these department related standing committees. So this is an important topic, and with this we finish this topic and we move on to our next topic for the day. The next topic which appears in the newspaper reads, the Eastern Economic Forum and India's Balancing Act. Now, this is an article which becomes important with the whole scenario of Russia, China, and India relationship. And as we know that these three countries are coming in a lot of focus, and therefore the Eastern Economic Forum, which is basically based in Russia, it becomes important for us to know, especially from the prelims point of view and also from the means point of view. So what is this Eastern Economic Forum? So this side where we see Vladivostok as a city, this is the far east side of Russia. And Russia, the major population of Russia is situated in the western side, one which is attached to the Europe. And the large area of its east side is relatively empty but full of resources. And this is what it wants to leverage and wants other countries of Asia to invest in these far east region. For this cooperation, the Eastern Economic Forum was established. So it is an international forum organized each year in the city of Vladivostok, which is the far east city of Russia in Far East city in Russia. And it was first held in September 2015 at the Far Eastern Federal University in Vladivostok to support the economic development of Russia's Far East and to expand international cooperation in the Asia Pacific region. This forum is sponsored by the organizing committee appointed by the Ross Congress, and this forum serves as a platform for discussion of key issues in the world economy, regional integration, and the development of new industrial and technological sectors, as well as of the global challenges facing Russia and other nations. So as we see, the name is suggesting Eastern, which signifies eastern part of Russia, economic, which says that it is majorly an economic body which wants to indulge into enhancing the economic opportunities of the Russian Far East, and that is the major aim for the grouping. Now, talking about this particular grouping, and as we saw in the map, this Russian Far East is attached to a lot of nations such as China, Japan, South Korea, right? All of these nations are surrounded by the Russia's Far East region. So therefore, all these countries are matching with Russia and partnering with Russia to take up and invest in this region and to build a lot of projects. And that is why it becomes important for India as well to be invested in this region and to balance its interest between Russia and the West. So this is what India is also doing. Let's first look at the Russian Far East region. So this, as we saw, the eastern part of Russia is the Far Eastern Federal District. So let's look at something about the Far East and then we'll talk about what India is doing in this region. So this Far East region is the easternmost part of Russia, as we saw. It borders two oceans, the Pacific and the Arctic, and five countries: China, Japan, Mongolia, the United States, and the DPRK. So the Far Eastern Federal District covers the more than a third of the country's territory, right? So even though the major population of the Russian country lives in the western part, but a major area of the Russian continent or the Russian country is being taken by these eastern region, and it is therefore rich in natural resources like diamonds, stannary, borax materials, gold, tungsten, fish and seafood, and other Arctic resources. So it's quite rich in natural and marine resources, and about one third of all coal reserves and hydroengineering resources of the country are there in this eastern region. And forests of this region comprise about 30% of the total forest area of Russia. So this is the significance of the Far East region of Russia, and that is why, as I said, most countries, these neighboring countries, are also investing in this region. And therefore, India is also not behind, and it has already made a lot of efforts to engage with Russia in Far East region. India is very keen to strengthen its partnership with Russia on the Arctic subjects, and there is immense scope for cooperation in the field of energy. As we saw, Russia is having coal reserves, and there are a lot of energy avenues as well. Therefore, India is quite keen in investing in this region, and therefore, in 2019, India announced a commitment to Act Far East policy. So it gave its commitment, and this policy is an important part of a special and privileged strategic partnership with Russia. And it has also made significant investments in the Russian Far East in the fields of pharmaceuticals and diamonds. So that is why we would have seen, this is a news from last year, where India gave Russia a line of credit worth rupees $1 billion. And this line of credit to Russia worth rupees $1 billion was for the investment in Russia's Far East region only. And India can also have cooperation in the mobility of talent, where Indian talent has contributed to development of many resource regions of the world, and similar mobility of this talent can also be done to the Far East region of Russia, right? Then, with respect to connectivity, also India is making efforts where connectivity projects like the international north-south corridor, like the Chennai-Vladivostok Maritime Corridor or the Northern Sea Route, will play an important role in the development of India and Russia. And then, since the coal reserves are high in Russia, the coking coal supply can also be leveraged, where Russia can become an important partner for the Indian steel industry through the coking coal supply, where India can get coal supply from Russia. So these are the opportunities which are present for India with respect to engaging with Russia in the Far East region, to which a lot of efforts India has already started to put, and there are a lot of other areas which India can put efforts on it also. And as the article suggests, India is carrying out the balancing act by maintaining its interest involved in the Russian Far East region also, and also making sure that the newly formed group, that is the uh, IPEF, or the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which USA is heading. So India is participating in that framework also, which is also based in the Pacific region. This is more in the Far East region of Russia. So both these forums do have a differences in their geographical focuses, but they are in similar regions, and India is balancing its interests in both these forums. So this is the important points related to this article, and with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, Delay in government's flagship Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, or what we call PMAY-G scheme, to invite penalty. Now, this is an important article appearing in the newspaper which talks about the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. There are two versions of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. One is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin and one is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. So the discussion for the article is about the Gramin version of the scheme, which was basically, as the name suggests, this was the flagship scheme for the government to achieve the objective of housing for all by 2022. So initially, this scheme was launched to make sure that every person in the country has a house to live by 2022, which was earlier known as the Indira Awas Yojana, and it was restructured to name the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, which was launched from the year 2016. So which ministry deals with this scheme? The Ministry of Rural Development. Since it's the Gramin version of the housing scheme, Rural Development Ministry deals with it. And what is the aim of the scheme? As we saw, to provide housing for all. So aim is to provide a pakka house with basic amenities to all rural families who are homeless or living in a kacha or dilapidate houses by the end of March 2022. So this was what the deadline was earlier from the year March 2022, but because of the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, the government had to extend this deadline to March 2024. So they have extended the deadline for by 2 years because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And to help rural people below the poverty line in construction of dwelling units and upgradation of existing unserviceable kacha houses by providing assistance in the form of a full grant. So there are two kinds of aims in the schemes. One is to either constructing the houses for these rural people below the poverty line, or those who do not have their kacha houses are unserviceable, they can be given a financial assistance. So two kinds of, again, either build house or give financial assistance are the two kinds of aims under the scheme. And who are the beneficiaries? People belonging to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, freed bonded labor, and non-SC/ST categories, widows or next of kin of defense personnel killed in action, ex-servicemen and retired members of the paramilitary forces, disabled persons and minorities. All these vulnerable sections of the societies are the beneficiaries under the scheme. And how are these beneficiaries selected? So they were selected through three-stage validation, and the numbers were taken from the socio-economic caste census of 2011 and other data from the Gram Sabha and the geotagging measures that were taken under this. So these were the methods through which the beneficiaries were selected, and in total the scheme was supposed to is now supposed to construct around 3 crore houses. So the cost sharing of the building is done in the manner of 60-40 in the plain areas between center and state, wherein the center would be contributing 60% of the funds and 40% of the funds would be contributed by the state. And for the northeastern hilly states, the ratio is 90:10, where 10% would be given by the northeastern and hilly states and 90% would be contributed by the central government. Now let's come to the features of this scheme. The minimum size of the house has been increased to 25 square kilometer from 20 square meters. I'm sorry, from the 20 square meters with a hygienic cooking space. That is the minimum size under for the dwelling unit that would be constructed under this scheme. And the unit assistance has been increased from rupees 70,000 to rupees 1.20 lakh in plain, and from 75,000 to 1.30 lakh in the hilly states. So the amount of assistance has also been increased in the revised version of the scheme. And the assistance for construction of toilets shall be leveraged through convergence with Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin and the Manrega scheme or any other dedicated source of funding. So this is also an important thing that is being connected, where the objective of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is to construct homes, and the objective of the Manrega scheme or Swachh Bharat scheme is to construct hygienic spaces or construction of toilets. So both these schemes can be converged together, and that is what the scheme also aims, where the aspect of construction of toilets can be converged with the schemes of Manrega and Swachh Bharat Mission. And convergence for pipe drinking water, electricity connections, and LPG connections. There are also particular schemes for these particular objectives. So LPG gas connection is the Ujjwala Yojana. There are schemes for electricity connection. So all of those particular targeted schemes for these aspects can also be converged with this particular scheme of Awas Yojana. So this is a important connection that the government is making. So these are the features of this scheme. Now, let's talk about the performance of this scheme, which is the highlight of this article, wherein it has been seen that the performance of this article was of the scheme was taking a hit due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But by the year August 2022, of the 2.95, close to 3 crore houses that were to be built for the rural poor, less than 2 crore houses had been built by August 2022. So a significant number of houses, close to 1 crore, are yet to be built, and money has been sanctioned to almost 85% of the beneficiaries. So this scheme has also helped in employment generation, as we saw, since it can be converged with the Manrega scheme. Many states provided employment to their migrant laborers during lockdown under the scheme. But this is where the article comes in and says that there are certain states which are lagging behind in their targets, and these are West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha, along with Assam, are the leading four states who are far behind their targets. And the initial deadline, which was there for March 2022, which I said was extended by another 2 years till March 2024. So it is for these states who are lagging behind these targets, is the article saying that the union government has added a penalty clause now for these states, wherein since these states are not performing and not executing the Awas Yojana, now there would be penalty for these state governments. And what is this penalty clause? So if the sanction of the house is delayed for more than 1 month from the date of issue of the target, the state government would be penalized rupees 10 per house for the first month of delay, and after the first month of delay it would go to rupees 20 per house. So this is the monetary penalty that the central government has laid on those state governments which are not executing the schemes. Similarly, if the first installment due to the beneficiary is delayed for more than 7 days from the date of sanction, then the state governments will have to pay rupees 10 per house per week of delay. So again, a stringency of the penalty has been made for the state governments. This is what the article is saying, and we trace down the important points with respect to the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which become important from us from the examination point of view. So with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, "Monitor financial sector risks for timely action, urges Finance Minister." So this particular article becomes important because this article is about the meeting of the Financial Stability and Development Council. So the finance minister is the chairperson of this council, and this council meets to deal with the macroeconomic indicators of the economy. So in that aspect, let's learn about the Financial Stability and Development Council. What is this council which the finance minister has headed? So this is a non-statutory apex council under the Ministry of Finance, constituted by the executive order. So this should be remembered that this FSDC is not a statutory body or a constitutional body. It is a non-statutory body because it was constituted by a executive order in 2010. And the Raghuram Rajan Committee in 2008 on financial sector reforms had first proposed the creation of such a Financial Stability and Development Council. So what is the composition of this council? So as we are seeing in the newspaper, the Union Finance Minister of India is the chairperson. So therefore, Honorable Finance Minister Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman is the chairperson of FSDC. And then there are other members in this council. Whoever are the financial stakeholders in the financial sector of India, they are the members. So therefore, Governor of RBI, Finance Secretary, Secretary of Department of Economic Affairs, Secretary Department of Financial Services, Secretary of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Chief Economic Advisor, Ministry of Finance, other finance secretaries of the states, other members of chairman of SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, IBBI are all members of the Financial Stability and Development Council. And the FSDC subcommittee is chaired by the government of RBI, and all the members of the FSDC are also members of the subcommittee as well. So this is one fact to remember, that the FSDC subcommittee is chaired by the governor of RBI. Now talking about what are the aims and objectives about this council. So as we are seeing in the newspaper, this council meets from time to time to deliberate and talk about the macroeconomic conditions of the Indian economy. So their objective is to strengthen and institutionalize the mechanism of maintaining financial and macroeconomic stability. Then to enhance interregulatory coordination and promote financial sector development. So this is what we're seeing, where all the financial sector stakeholders are there in the council. So this would promote interregulatory coordination, where since all the regulator body chairmen are present at one council, all these people can come together and make collective decisions about the Indian economy. And it also focuses on financial literacy and financial inclusion. This is also one important aspect, where this council, apart from deliberating on the macroeconomic conditions of Indian economy, is also interested in enhancing the financial literacy and financial inclusion in country. And next is coordinating India's international interface with financial sector bodies such as the FATF, or Financial Action Task Force, and the Financial Stability Board, which function at a international level. So not just deal with India's economy at the national level, but also represent India at the international level and deliberate on financial aspects at the international level. So this was our discussion today with respect to today's articles from the day, and we'll meet again next time with the important articles from the newspaper. Thank you.